No, I'm not available on the 13th, I'm sorry.
Isn't that the primary, so it's
The 12th.
available?
Is the 12th the primary?
12th is okay. The ZBA meeting that night.
What time?
Go out on Gina's yacht.
Yeah, that's going to be an issue if the primary is on that day.
Yeah, that's the 13th, actually.
Is it?
We moved it, it's a weird date.
I don't know, I have personal plans.
You want to do the 12th?
What time are we talking about?
5 o'clock?
Fine with me.
Can we meet earlier?
Yes.
5 o'clock on the 12th?
4?
Motion and second for September 12th at 5 o'clock?
How about
I can't
4
do-
o'clock?
I cannot do 4.
Can't do it either.
So 5 o'clock?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Now, can we set one for the following week?
I can't.
What, you don't know your schedule? The problem is, it's just going to get taken up. What about the week after?
After the week of the 10th, I don't know what's going on, so I'm going to have to...
So we've set 5 PM on the 12th. On the 10th, we're going to have a review of revenues to give us something to think about. What will we be discussing on the 12th? That presentation?
Yeah, we can start going over some of the worksheets. And what we did last year is we had each department come in and make a presentation as to why they needed whatever they're requesting.
Why don't we set our next meetings at that workshop?
Look, if Tom can't set a schedule, as soon as he can do it, let's do it. Again, dates go.
Well, I'm here.
Yeah, so let's come back to this on the 10th when
Okay.
we have a better idea of people's schedules. But we've set the 12th.
All right, so we have one day. Moving on to the third item on this discussion, the ZEO request for...
Make a short comment on the budget. Todd Crane, Village resident. This summer, separately in your budget activities, I understand you're going to be possibly looking at a building planning zoning package. We've shown it to Christiane and the building department officer previously. But in the course of those discussions, the question came up of your current computer infrastructure. Are you looking at that as part of the budget process? And if so, I've mentioned to Tom this summer and also to Mayor Reardon, if you're looking to upgrade to, I think, a single server, you have a lot of isolated computers right now. There is a possible opportunity that we sort of investigated the day we were visiting here, and Kevin Jeffries took a quick look and thought it might be possible, and that opportunity is for you to buy one server between the village and the town and share that server. There is a cable that runs across, that used to be apparently an old TV cable between the two buildings high above the street. That could be restrung with a high-speed line, so the server could be in one building. You can do what's called partitioning the server so that both municipalities can use that single server for their own purposes in totally separate and secure environments. And I suggest if you're thinking about upgrading your equipment, and I think the village is at least considering it, there are always budget limitations, that you look seriously at that option and see if that can't be done. It's a good example of resource sharing between town and village. It means when the, I believe the village also uses the Jeffries. I'm not quite sure, but you can have a single computer company, whoever it is, service both sets of applications from one computer in one building. They don't have to go to two different buildings, or if they're dialing in, they only have to dial into one location.
What about a community block grant for that?
My answer as the head of the tech committee, we have authorized Northeast Computer Services to write our RFP for our tech initiative. I'm going to ask that it's delivered at our next meeting. we had somewhat decided loosely to fund this in advance of the budget, but since it's right on the heels of it, it's going to go out for bid. We'll invite people to bid. That's certainly something we've considered in our tech meeting. So
Okay.
we're on it, and
Great.
I will contact Jim and, get the date. I'll ask that he deliver the RFP for our consideration for the 10th.
Okay.
But Elizabeth, at least what I understand what Dot is saying,
We've considered that in our tech meetings. We're aware of
so
it.
this RFP that's going to be presented to us would embody this concept?
It's something we could consider, or it's something that we could decide not to do. But our tech initiative entails having a server so that computers are automatically backed up. Heinz, who's working diligently on our capital replacement plan with us, has also seen that we're going to have to replace computers here in Town Hall. We need that. We need our split router. We need, we don't have Wi-Fi capability here for some newer computers. My new PowerBook Mac can't recognize the signal. It's so arcane. So we do want to be able to provide the public with any documents that we're discussing. We want to go wireless. We want to get everything on our web. This is a part of it. We've been discussing it, so.
Dot, if I wanted to try for a community block grant, would you help me write that or look at it with
Yep.
me? Okay.
How does that relate to what the tech committee is doing?
A community block grant for what? For our
To pay for the server, the new server.
Won't see the money till next year sometime.
servers,
Well-
$5,000 or $6,000, and we need to. We've talked about this. The Office of the State Controller and our audit has said we're not in compliance with our information saving, to say the least. We need to step it up, and we're aware of it.
Well, Elizabeth, I guess what I don't understand is this is the first time I heard the idea of sharing something with the village, and it does sound like a very good idea. And to start going out with an RFP that doesn't factor this in it, and I understand we have needs, but
I think it's something that if the village wants to buy in, it's not a high-ticket item, is what I'm saying. It's a $5,000 or $6,000 item. I think we can accomplish it pretty quickly. It's like.
But doesn't the RFP have to envision this? Would you write the RFP differently?
It would be written differently if the server were set up, if it was an intent for two organizations to share the resource of the machine, then the RFP to do that piece of the work would be distinct from what you want to do. Say, well, actually, it might not be distinct because some of the initiatives that the town's considering the village, like wholly wireless with a compatible router, I don't know all the things you're considering, but once you have a single server in a single location, it makes sense for both municipalities to take advantage of all the elements of the RFP that you're asking for requirements and quotes on. So
I am happy to include the village. I am loath to slow down our initiative
That's
for
the
them
problem.
to get up to speed with us. I mean, we've been talking about this for months.
Years.
Thank you.
the issue is
They can jump on quickly, fine. If not, it's not a huge amount of money.
Well,
see.
$5,000 or $6,000, I hate to,
$4,000.
wait, or $4,000, whatever it is.
I don't advocate waiting another year for the village to get.
I don't think anybody's suggesting we wait another year, and,
I'll just reiterate that the tech committee has considered this. We're aware.
on a piece of what might happen as a result of that. I don't want to have a conflict of interest from that point of view. But this
Well-
setup has really nothing to do with our separate bid, except for the fact you probably would need a new server to run our software because it's just not going to run on the machines you have. But that would be true of anything you purchase. So.
I think we've agreed that for purposes of this project, since it's not a huge project, that we would let vendors who help us with the RFP bid on the process.
Okay.
We have taken that step.
Well, I'm not bidding on the,
I don't know what
the
you...
network. There's two things here. There's your network and computer infrastructure. I have nothing to do with that. Our company does nothing like that. Our software is specific building planning zoning. It's already installed in the village, and the village has basically all our products, but and we're looking to see if the town is interested.
I just want to, reiterate, I can't even work in town hall because my computer cannot
No, I know,
recognize
I
the
know.
archaic signal from our wireless access. So I'm really looking forward to bringing my computer in here and being able to work. So we'll proceed. It's certainly something we can discuss.
Thank you, Dodd.
Thanks, Dodd.
All right, so with that, we have the zoning enforcement officer request a comprehensive management software package that was forwarded to us by email on July 31st, right? We have some sort of discussion with this. This involves a software that could be shared with other departments, including the assessor's office and so on, right, Christian? Or is that Dodd? Is that, what are you saying? Okay.
Kristen, would you stand up and introduce, some of the public might not know who you are.
Well, my name is Christian Fekete. I'm the zoning enforcement officer in the town of Rhinebeck. So we've been looking to improve the management capabilities of the software that we have in the office for both building department and zoning department, and there are a few packages out there. The idea that we're trying to implement is to get a package that includes property data, assessment, as well as all permitting, zoning issues, infraction issues, resolutions, building permits, and so forth, that would be centralized on a server and would be accessible by both the building department, the zoning department, the assessor's office, and with a possible on the road unit, so that when the building inspector goes to look at a property, he has all the records of that property, whether there's an infraction, a building permit that hasn't been closed, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that's a very complete package.
And the money for this is not in this year's budget, is that correct?
It's not, no, it's not.
Okay.
So you're going to be asking for a specific sum in connection with these budget sheets that are out there for this program?
If you're asking me to do that, I will gladly do that, yes.
Yeah, well, that's how we get money, is you got to ask for it from the town board. So this software would let us get away from paper, everything would be computerized?
Well, that's the idea, that everything, Dodd, please interrupt me if I do something wrong, because Dodd helped us to create the RFP. It hasn't been sent out yet, but we have the document here with the specification of the software. But yes, to answer your question, everything will be online, centralized on the server, and all the information on a particular property would be there. Pending application, pending permit, everything would be there. Maps, images, photographs.
Is it limited to how many people can utilize it? Like, is this something else that could be used by the village as well as us?
There would be a separate copy for each municipality. You have to isolate.
Licensing.
I'll speak generically because most all the packages that are out there operate similarly. The packages I'm familiar with, each municipality has to buy its own copy because it is because you need to be able to separate all of your accounting and all of your reports and all your documents from another municipality, and you don't want one municipality mixing in with another municipality's materials. The village already has the precursor to this package and is looking to upgrade to the package that we're proposing. So that's a possible cross-benefit in terms of people in one department in the village being trained on the same software as people who would be in the town. If you chose our package, you'd be familiar with both sets of functions.
Sorry.
Questions?
Will this tie in with RDA from the, the fees collected and that kind of thing?
RDA.
Our accounting software?
It has an export function, and if there's a standard format for your accounting, it can export to accounting for all the receivables that come in through the billing department. Okay. We do that with a number of accounting packages now with Munis and KVS and a number of other New York State accounting packages that are standardized. So yes, there isn't a standardized accounting interface, so you don't have to do paper to move the data over from the building department or the zoning or the planning over to the
That's
accounting.
really important, because that's our big investment.
Pardon me?
That's our big software investment.
RDA.
Yeah.
Right.
And we need to hook as much into that
Preserve
as we
that
possibly
and
can.
preserve the electronic records. Are the fees collected now directly by the building department, or where do they go to pay when they pay those fees?
I think
They
we
pay?
Yeah,
They
downstairs.
pay in the building or zoning department, so you collect them there and then they put them in the software there, but the transactions would electronically move over to RDA.
Well, I'm not sure that it's entered in the system at that point or when the money goes to the town clerk, whether that's where the money is recorded into the system.
Well, from the completeness of your record from the building point of view, it's more advantageous to put the money in the building or the planning or the zoning component, because that money stays with, in an integrated environment, you want the money to stay with the transaction. If it's a building permit, if it's a zoning variance, whatever that fee is, you want that to stay visible with the transaction documents related to that permit or that variance or that subdivision plan or whatever it is. At the same time, you want the money to go in the accounting system so it's visible there. So you really want it both places. If you keep sending it straight to accounting, then there's never any visibility. And there are always questions that come up about fees in the administrative side of building, planning, zoning, where you want to have the record there to know what's going on.
And what was the cost on this package, Christian or Dodd?
Well, it depends on how many features you buy. Christian mentioned a bunch of features. The base package of building, planning, zoning is around $15,500, I think. But that's without, and then we add, as do other vendors, if you buy other components like GIS or mobile devices, those are additions. I have the prices back on my seat if you want those now. And these are, we priced pretty aggressively because we would like to have Rhinebeck as a client.
So Todd, it's a $15,000 with the features. Is that's the software, is there a yearly licensing
There
fee
is.
on top of it?
I believe it's $2,300.
And Christian, you'll need to put that into your budget.
But it sounds like this may be a good subject for a block grant. All they can do is say no.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think.
Is this something the tech committee can
So I'll give you
work on
some.
as the block grant, or how
I
to,
don't think so. Knowing
Uh,
the anemic condition of our overworked tech committee, I don't see that happening.
I'll try and tackle it.
okay,
I'll
and maybe
call
Bruce,
Dodd for help.
I'm volunteering Bruce in the sense that he's filled out one of these forms before.
But Joel's here. Is block grant still basically ADA oriented?
USDA oriented?
No,
ADA,
American
Disability.
Disabilities Act?
I believe County Executive Molinaro, yeah, a lot of the distribution was like sidewalks and stuff. But I'm not an expert on that issue, okay?
Okay. I mean, it was pretty narrow is what I was trying
Okay,
to...
maybe we can find out if this would even be eligible, and if it's eligible, and maybe we just call the county executive's office.
Ask them to get the money.
What?
Okay, go ahead, Doug.
So for budget planning purposes, and if you went to somebody like BAS who does your clerk package, you would probably get a similar quote. They might be a little less, they might be quite a bit more. I don't know, but they're one of our friendly competitors. The quote we gave you for building, planning, and zoning, just the core packages to automate those three, was $14,550, one-time cost, annual service of $2,300. If you add in a mapping component, a GIS, that's one-time cost of $4,200, and that's actually a cloud-based product. Annual hosting charge, I'm not as familiar with that. We have two hosting charges. If you only use it for internal use, it's $800 a year. But if you decide to make the maps open to the public, it's $1,200 a year. That's for the web hosting, either internally or for the public. And then there's a base maintenance fee of $600.
Is it compatible with any sort of website? Would it be compatible with our website? We could post all of this for public information?
It would. We make it so when they click on an icon to go to your maps, that icon is embedded in your website at the point where you tell us to put it.
Also, the planning, zoning information to the extent of what's public could be on our website?
That's a separate, let me get to that. I don't know whether we gave you prices. Hang on just a second as I go down the list. Because what I've given you so far is no web, and then I gave you GIS with and without web. The next thing that Christiane mentioned you want was a mobile device so you could go out in the field. That's $1,500 for the first user, $500 for each additional. So if you had one for building, one for planning, zoning, that would be $2,000 one-time cost for two devices. And it's $200 a user, so that'd be $400 a year. So you're looking at $2,000 plus $400 for a couple of mobile devices.
And we're going to get a copy of this?
This is what he emailed you on July 16th.
Yeah, we have
This entire thing? Oh, I just had, okay.
And then the internet component is $2,200 with $800 for hosting and support. Because that again is
Sorry,
a web.
Can you say that again, Doug?
$2,200 one-time cost.
This is for the web?
Yep, $400, which includes service and hosting.
What does that include the web?
I'd have to have come back. I have not used the web piece myself. I'd have to Will, who's our lead designer, come in. Basically, you can, if you want, you can open up your permits for data entry, and you can view the status of permits online. We haven't really, complaints generally are not put online for viewing because a lot of it is personal data. So we haven't had anybody really ask for that yet. Also, if you put a complaint system online, you're liable to get overwhelmed with complaints that way. So it's primarily for a building department. I don't think we've had anybody put planning or zoning components online yet. I have to check on that. So it's primarily a building feature. Yeah.
I think you got to come to the microphone.
Would the web access not be redundant if we had this information on the server?
Well, when the web access is for public use, so a public could go in and theoretically apply for a permit or check on the status of a permit and see the status of inspections and how far along you are, or a variance or something like that. That's typically what the web component is used for. There are some issues about letting somebody just go in and put an application up on the web if they haven't given you a fee yet, though. So you have to talk. There's some systems engineering, which we help you with, is just part of the process to figure out how you want it to work for your municipality, because there are some municipalities don't want to get paperwork without money, for example.
I'm Heinz Sauer from the village of Rhinebeck. My question is, what town, what the village and so on is using this system at this point?
We have about 120 licenses installed. People nearby include City of Kingston, Town of Poughkeepsie, East Fishkill, White Plains, Newcastle, North Castle, also known as, or Newcastle, also known as Chappaqua, Scarsdale, North Salem, Town of Cortland. There are probably a couple others in Dutchess. I don't recall. We have Kinderhook up north of here. That's just regionally here. Long Island, there are Smithtown, City of Glencoe, City of Long Beach, Garden City. Those are some of the names you would recognize right away. Brookville. Brookville's an 800 parcel village. Town of Greenburgh in Westchester is the second largest town in New York State using it, 30,000 parcels. Town of Ramapo, town of Clarkstown, town of Stony Point, all users. So we're pretty well spread out in the region. We also have a business partnership with General Code Corporation. They vend this product, and they've sold it in several other states, including Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, I think Michigan, North Carolina. I've lost track a little bit. It does interface to display, I don't know whether you bought the web portion of the code book so that the code book is online now, but if you have that online, you can be in the building or planning department and go straight to the code book from our software and view the codes that associate with a particular zone of town.
Well, that would be good because we are getting requests from planning and zoning that do not have the code book, only have a Xerox copy of what was initially passed in 2009, and it's been amended some, so it would be very useful. But I'm just trying to get this into my head, and I think what we really need from Christian is a list of what bells and whistles you want. And then the RFP should ask for these bells and whistles, and we'll get bids from various bidders. Now,
we have done that.
What?
We have done that.
Sent to us.
Okay, so that will be in the RFP that will be given out to us?
Yeah, you have that already.
Well, when you say we have it, I don't have an RFP, and I'm not asking for Dodd's price list. That's meaningless to me.
No. We have an RFP with, that is a document that is ready to be sent for proposal, including the bells and whistles that you're talking about. And that document has been emailed to you.
On the 31st, I think, of July.
Right.
Beats me, but I'll look to see if I have it.
Yeah, right here.
And that's a draft RFP.
Right, I have a copy here.
Good, it'll save me printing it out.
Thank you, Christian.
Okay.
Thank you, Dodd.
In advance of the 31st as well. So what's our next step for you, Christian? To give you permission to go ahead with the RFP?
That's right. Yeah.
Are we prepared to vote on that tonight?
Well, it would be nice to look at it first before I vote on it.
We've had it for about 6 weeks, I think.
Well, that may be, but I overlooked it. I'm not sure Gina has read it. I don't know about Bruce and Tom, whether they have read it, so I would ask that we have some time to look at it.
We could make it part of the budget discussion too, but
Yeah,
one thing that I found about this is it creates efficiencies that work for us. You know, the difficulties we have downstairs with the different departments. I think the program is good for us. If we could share it with the village, that'd be great. But it is helpful for us to overcome some obstacles we've had with sharing information and putting them out to public. So.
Yeah, I have a question. I don't know if we included that in the RFP, but there's the zoning, the building department, and the ZBA and the town board. All those are involved in the permitting. I was wondering if that also was linked to, to parcels.
And the assessors.
All of the, in our implementation of our software, all of the activities of building, planning, and zoning are all linked to your parcels, and we load, and all vendors do this. They get a copy of your RPS data and load up the parcels as part of starting you up. They load up the parcels from RPS, because we always want to match to RPS, because that's your Bible for your parcel IDs or your section, block, and lots. And then you start inputting data on top of that, although we would convert the existing data you have in some spreadsheets, I think, particularly for the building permits, and as best we can, depending on the quality of your data, try to associate the information you have in your spreadsheets with the parcel IDs in RPS. If those are not well typed or inaccurately typed, then you have to do a fair amount of data entry on your own to get those caught up. But at least you have a day forward situation where on the first day you can start issuing new work and hopefully get records of the old work in there for, say, permitting or complaints or violations or subdivisions or whatever. So that's kind of how you do, startup. I forgot, but the town board is not, there's not a component that specifically supports the town board, but the town board can go in any time and look up a parcel and see in one place all the history of building permits, complaints, violations, site plan subdivisions in a summary form, a kind of a grid, one line at a time, and then you click into that and see more detail if you want to. If it's a town board, you want to see the history of a parcel, you can certainly go to one place, look it up by name, by legal address, by section, block, and lot, and see everything you want to know in a summary history, and then you click further and further into the detail as your interest takes you there. Was that?
Well, that wasn't exactly my question. My question had to do with when the parcels, when the applications move from the zoning department to the planning board for review of an application, the question has to do with whether or not the findings of the planning board and the resolutions are included.
When we redesigned that, we designed it so the data flow, or the information flow as it goes from board to department stays with the parcel, so you can see the tracking. For example, if somebody comes into the building department and they get rejected because the building officer believes a variance is needed, they electronically check off denied, and it automatically asks the building official, do you want to send this to the zoning department? And if you say yes, the permit stays in the building department screen as a denied item, but it immediately turns up as in the in-hopper, the electronic in-hopper, not a piece of paper, of the zoning enforcement officer to take action on either or with the zoning board to go get a variance. Then once, assume the variance is granted, that history of the granting of the variance comes back to building and associates with that permit because it was part of the initial permit action that needed a variance. So the short of that is if you have a building permit that goes to get a variance and comes back, when you look at that building permit 10 years from now, you'll see there was a variance granted before the permit was issued, and the history of what happened in zoning as a result of that. Same thing if there's a subdivision, if the subdivision's associated with the parcel, or also there's some permitting that occurs out of the subdivision, you can do that as well. You can either permit directly on the parcel, or in some towns they do subdivisions and they start permitting before they have a valid parcel ID because the county hasn't assigned the parcel IDs. You can do that as well. There's a lot of flexibility because of the complexity of site plan subdivision kinds of stuff. All the conditions associated with it, particularly when I'm thinking about our zoning law and all the conditions that are going to be stipulated in the new zoning law with site plans and the requirements that have to be met, before planning board gives approval. All those materials stay with the parcel as it travels through site plan subdivision approval, stays with it when you go over to the building side. So there is that integration.
And one of the bells and whistles is whether we can find this system to just town employees or whether it's available to the general public, and there's a difference in cost.
That is correct.
Can I just say, we're talking about going out for an RFP, and Dodd, your company is going,
Right.
will be bidding on it. So really, you're talking about your software specifically.
Yeah.
And we should really be talking about what we need, what I think the town needs, than having a specific, I think.
Well,
presentation.
everything I've said tonight is pretty generic to the industry.
I
It's
just
not.
wanted to make that
Yep.
distinction.
No, well, Elizabeth, my follow-up question is, in this RFP that was sent to us,
Is it Christian's RFP?
I don't know whose, this thing you just gave me. Does
Christian,
this,
will you also, excuse me, make sure that you resend it with today or tomorrow's date on it, just so that everybody has a brand-new package with an updated date? Thank you.
does this call for asking for a price to make it available generally to the public? So that's one of the bells and whistles that's not included in the RFP. What? Oh, okay. So you're saying no, it's not included.
Thanks, Doc.
Thank you.
Yeah?
I understand what this is going to do, take us from paper to computer. It has to be available to the public. It's public
agree.
record, and the information has to be available to the public. Anyone can come in at any time and review the files before a public hearing, things
Yes.
like that. So
I agree.
we have to spend the money, if we do this, to make it available to the
I
public.
think that one thing this board is committed to, we've been talking about it, is anything that's public record should be available on our website.
All right.
So then it behooves us to make sure we have the proper bells and whistles in here. Pardon me?
That's why that was sent.
Yeah, but
Christian.
Well, we're putting it on our agenda to
Let's
address
go.
it at the next meeting. Everybody is going to have to read it, and Christian, hopefully you'll come back at our next meeting to discuss again.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Christian. The next item on the agenda for discussion is a follow-up from last year's consideration for the potential layoffs for town employees as a result of budget discussions. Last year, we had considered removing 2 positions to address the need for operational costs and, of course, the economic downturn in the economy over the past several years. So we had put off layoffs to revisit the discussion for September, and now we are at the end of August, so now we find it on the agenda. One thing I see is I just went to a meeting with the county executive with other supervisors and mayors, and I find them in the same position that we are, where they're facing downsizing and resizing government to fit the needs for public service. Theirs is much more extensive than ours, as you can imagine. So, but anyways, here we are to rediscuss the issue.
But Tom, if we are going to discuss termination of employment, discipline of specific individuals, I think that's properly done in executive session. So I think if that's what we're going to discuss, I would make a motion to go into executive session to specifically discuss that with Kathy as part of our last items on the agenda.
Sure, come on up.
I think there are two separate issues here. I think there are a couple of items that need to go into executive session that have to do with personnel issues at the highway department. But I also think that there's the generic discussion regarding layoffs. So I think the board needs to determine how it wants to separate these issues. Last week, there was an executive session meeting, started with a full board meeting, went into executive session. At that point, I did come forward and ask to speak on something so that we could address some of these issues and the looming question of the layoffs. And at that time, I was told that it was not an executive session issue, would not be entertained that night, and we needed to come into the full board meeting, full public meeting tonight. So now here we are, and there's a motion to move it into executive session. So, and I do agree that there are some components in terms of things that I would like to bring to the board regarding, issues if we do get to that point of discussing layoffs. But in terms of the layoffs themselves, again, last week I was told to do that publicly. So I feel a little bit like a yo-yo here, and I'm hoping that the board can be a little bit clearer.
Can't we have a public discussion and an executive discussion of things that are appropriate for executive session?
Well,
Can't we have general and specific?
but I don't know how you have a general discussion without talking about specific individuals. That's what it's all about. So I think we're talking executive session myself, and maybe what we told you last week was wrong. We certainly didn't take a vote on it, and you know, if we go into executive session and we feel it's not executive session material, we can certainly come out and talk about it generally.
Oh,
I think you did vote on it.
I think there's two issues. I think one of them was last time what we were told that Kathy has found some money in this year's budget. And I don't think that has to do with an individual or any individuals. It's, you know, explain that, and then that's something that doesn't have to be discussed on in executive session.
But if the follow-up is that should be used for not terminating specific individuals, I think we're into executive session.
Specific individuals, I think we're talking about positions.
Right.
And I think we can talk about this publicly. Am I wrong?
I think you're right. I think you're.
I think we need to have this discussion.
I mean, you're correct. It's two different issues.
Yes, and I think that there may be a point at which, and I think Joe's anticipating some discussion that may move it into absolutely executive session area, but I think that the generic part and the questions that came up when I tried to bring it to the board last month are still out there. So again, you know, you guys need to decide this, how you want to proceed.
So I would vote that we do it in the whole thing in executive session. If anybody feels that we shouldn't, once we hear what Kathy wants to say, then we should come out. But look, majority rules.
I think that the public has a right to hear about the financial aspect that Kathy presented us, and I think there are some other areas that are appropriate for executive session. I think the public needs to hear
I think
about the personnel line in the highway.
I totally trust your expertise and judgment on what should be executive and what shouldn't. I think you're very knowledgeable about that. I think in the past, some of us up here have been guilty about discussing things publicly that should have been in executive session. And that's, so I don't think we can all be trusted to keep things executive when they should be. But I'm all for going forward until we hit that point.
What do the others say?
Well, I'll oppose that. I mean, I got to say, I think we've run into an issue where we go into executive session which should have been out in public as opposed to not in public. That's what my problem is. We are public servants and work with the public, and that's what we're here for. We're serving our community. They deserve to know what's going on, to the point where we're invading somebody's privacy. If we're talking about, one issue I'm talking about is open to public, is talking about operational costs, what we're affording, and getting the right size government for what we need here. We are hit a point where we're funding operational costs with our fund balances, not capital projects. We should be concerned about capital projects, capital lines, new equipment, so on. We got to think about what we're going to do to address those needs. Staffing to keep draining the money out of our fund balance is an issue, and this is on top of the mandates handed down from the state with the retirement, workman's comp, and also the medical health care. So we have got serious issues to talk about. You know, unfortunately, we're in the business to address them. We all are nice people, and we're at a tough spot in our career here. So some of these have to be addressed publicly. Talking about individuals, what's in the back room, that's something else.
But it all comes down to specific
I'd
individuals.
like Kathy to give us an overview of where she is with her personnel line financially, and I think that's totally appropriate.
Right, that's
Does
fine.
everybody agree?
I agree with that.
I do.
We're talking about this now because we put this off from last year. That's why it's in front of the board now. We're just taking the responsibility to talk about it when we said we would. So it's nothing new. It's but I would like to hear what you have to say.
Okay. Well, I did prepare some notes, so I'm going to speak from them just so I don't miss something. And there's items in here, anything that I feel or that you feel might be something that's going over into a different area. You know, we'll just make note of it, and we'll talk about that later. We're going into executive session anyway on some other items. So thank you for the opportunity to address you on this. I have made several attempts in the past to discuss the matter of layoffs, as Tom pointed out in his statement. Yes, the last that this came up was in the budget workshops a year ago when preparing for this year's budget, and the question of workforce reduction in the manner of layoffs was raised, but the question was not resolved. And the board decided to reduce the highway department personnel service lines and, quote, from there, see where we are in September, as you just said, Tom, too. So here we are, approaching September, but there's been no real communication on this between the board and the highway department about what's going to happen. There's been no resolution on this, no memo, no substantive communication, yet the looming rumor of layoffs has certainly been out there, not only in the highway department, but in the public. And to say that it has been significantly detrimental to morale is a vast understatement. But so tonight I did want to take the opportunity to again raise the matter and inform you of a couple of the facts for your consideration. First, I do want to point out that there is sufficient money remaining in the budget to avoid a highway department layoff this year. I estimate that with 9.5 payrolls remaining in the year, if we keep full staffing levels, we would still have about approximately $35,000 remaining.
That $35,000, does that include transfer of the money from Parsonage Street Bridge?
This does not include Parsonage Street Bridge funds, of which approximately $9,000 remain. There's not a transfer there. There's money available in the general lines because some money in the general lines were not accessed because we were also paying out of there. But there's $9,000 remaining in the Parsonage Street Bridge personnel lines above the $35,000 that I just said, because I did not want to include that. So
I'm not sure I understand what you're
35
saying.
plus 9. There's an additional 9 that hasn't been used for the Parsonage Street Bridge.
No, that's not my question. I thought that we allocated to Highway General X amount of money for the Parsonage Street Bridge project.
yes, that's correct, which is reimbursed by FEMA to you. So there's not an
Okay.
expenditure, it's borrowing
So
and reimbursed.
you think it's going to be offset completely by FEMA?
No.
But
If I had gone through the statement I prepared, I probably would have answered.
okay, I'll let you go, but I think one of the questions that I have, and I think Bruce is shaking his head, I think he has the same question, at least I had understood that the amount of money for services that was allocated to Parktown Highway, that, at least in my mind, that would go to a different line like capital equipment. And that's what I'm asking. If we moved that amount of money to capital equipment, what would that leave you with?
The Parsonage Street Bridge, again, is paid out of not Parktown funds.
Right.
It was paid out of the general fund.
Right.
And the reason it's paid out of the general fund is because it's a bridge, one of the 4 classified bridges that we have. FEMA was very clear that if they're reimbursing money in on the bridge into this portion of the budget, that is where it needs to be expended out of. So you can't transfer between those funds. So what you did was you took a loan on the fund balance in that portion of the budget, which is now being not only replaced by the FEMA grant, but there'll be an excess from the FEMA grant. So the other money, there's a remaining money is in the budget, in the general lines that we use in the Parktown portions of the budget that have not been accessed because, yes, we were paying personnel lines out of on a different project, out of a different line. So there's money there, but what I'm saying, back to your point of moving it to capital or something, yeah, there'll still be excess amounts left to do that, is what I am projecting.
So let me just make sure I understand.
And Parsonage Street Bridge, you gotta have all this to frame the question. Parsonage Street Bridge is only one factor. I mean, there are several factors in the remaining balances. Winter savings from the mild winter and mild spring that we have. We usually incur a lot of overtime in the spring with the flooding and the freeze thaws. There were savings. And I'm not just talking about the sand and salt, which are materials. I'm talking about savings on the personnel lines.
Clarify one thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think the board's concern with funding the Parsonage Street Bridge was that we would not then use the money to go back into the part-town personnel line. Can you just clarify that that's not that that's correct?
Say that again, please.
Remember when we funded it, we wanted to make sure, Bruce, make sure that I'm saying this the right way, that any excess would not be used for other personnel lines.
Right, and I am not looking at, I am not including that. The Parsonage Street Bridge,
nothing to do with that.
that's
money.
absolutely right.
Thank you.
Yes.
So we could.
Let me just phrase it the way I understand it. We said that there was a certain amount of work that was coming out of general repairs that was now going to be done on Parsonage Street Bridge. So that money would not be needed in general repairs. So we loaned money from, in my mind, part-town to the general fund to cover it until...
You didn't loan the money from Parktown.
Well, that's how we were going to handle it, bookkeeping, if we needed money.
But that was the hope in that way.
Okay,
that's why you borrowed the money from your fund balances in the general fund, because that's where the bridge stuff has to come out of.
That's fine,
not from Parktown.
But that amount of time that would have been spent out of general repairs was unused.
That is correct.
Because that was redirected to another fund.
No, it was not redirected. The labor was redirected. The monies were not redirected.
The labor was redirected to
Labor
another
was
fund.
charged. You have 2 accounts. You've got account A and account B.
I got it.
Yeah, but I don't know if the rest of the board does.
So the labor that was used, that was charged against Parsonage Street Bridge, that because it was being used on Parsonage Street Bridge.
Right, because we took out of account A instead of account B.
Was not able to be used in general repairs.
Right.
So that money, you're saying, has already been, we could move that to capital the way we had said.
And you would still have a
That's the
surplus.
question.
That's what we're asking.
That's what we're
Yes.
asking.
And we would have a surplus, and you think that surplus is about 35,000?
That'll bring that surplus down a little bit. I'll have to recalculate that, but there'll still be a surplus because my 35 figure is very conservative anyway. You all know that I deal in very conservative
Gotta be
figures.
in general repairs.
The $35,000 would be the surplus if we funded the current level of jobs in the highway department through the end of the year.
Correct.
We could pay for everybody's salary, and conservatively, we would still have 35,000.
Correct.
Say 45, probably, knowing you.
Well, 45 because if you count the 9 from Parsonage Street, you're up to 45, and knowing me, yes, it's probably more like in excess of 50.
Right, but Elizabeth, my question is that, would that be true if we took out a sum of money from highway part-town equal to what we took out of fund balance for Parsonage Street?
But why would you do that when you're being reimbursed, that money's coming in? You're looking at,
Agreement that we had.
that money's coming in.
That was the concern.
I know that was the concern, but that's,
How much
I
did we
can't change the
spend on-
facts of what it is.
How much did we spend on labor for Parsonage Street Bridge-ish?
I have those documents. You want me to get that right now?
Yeah.
Well, what did we fund it with? There's like 9,000 remaining.
Right. We funded it with, oh, gosh.
But let me look it up.
I thought it was somewhere in the 30s.
Yeah, I thought it was 36 or something.
I thought it was 30 and 28. I thought it was 58 altogether.
55 or 6.
No, I thought the two, one of them was 30 and one of them was 28. And I thought the 30 was personnel and 28 was contractual.
Contractual means equipment and supplies.
Yeah, the pumps.
It
and the
makes me
concrete.
nervous.
It was 30. It was 30 in the Parsonage Street Bridge personnel line.
Right, so that's what I said, yeah.
So if we took 30 out, you're saying you still would have money for...
It would probably be more down around 20. Yes.
So
Yes. So
the 237 that's in the general repairs line, if we took the 30 out, you'd have 207 there, and when you burn through that for the full year, the 9.5 more payroll things, you're still saying you'd have...
yeah, there are a number of contributors. There are a number of contributors, which is where I was trying to go with this. First of all, it was the mild winter and the lack of overtime, and also, and this is where something that we may need to talk about in executive session, but because we've had somebody out on unpaid leave as well. So there's been savings amassed in the budget due to somebody being out on unpaid leave for about 2 months now, is projected to be out minimum of another month. So that's a contributor to this.
That is, I think that is very fortunate for us for this year, but those are all things that we can't count on.
Yeah, I agree. I am only speaking to you at the moment about the budget for this remaining
Got
year,
it.
because that's the confines that we can discuss with it. So again, that talks about the contributing factors to the remaining balance: the winter savings, the employee out on unpaid leave, and some impact from the bridge. I also did want to point out, when we're talking about layoffs, there are some things that I don't know if the board is, or all of the board, some of the board certainly is aware of, but I don't know if all of the board is aware of, and I want to make you aware of these facts so you have them in your considerations. First is that the town is self-insured for unemployment cases. So there would still be paying for an employee that's laid off without the benefit of the work. Now, it's a lower amount, obviously, because unemployment doesn't pay the same as full salary, number one, and number two, the benefits are impacted as well. But you're still paying, but you no longer have the benefit of that person.
What are current benefits in the state now? 18 months still, or?
The last that I knew was 18 months, but I may not have the most current information on that.
What do you mean, Cobra? Cobra stuff? You mean COBA and all that stuff?
No,
Or is-
if someone's laid off,
Yeah.
they're entitled to
think
unemployment
18 months,
benefits.
right.
We're self-insured, so we have to pay those out of our pocket, 18 months.
I think it is 18 months.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. I might be wrong.
I also, again, did want to point out that since we do have an employee that will be out, is projected to still be out for a while, if a layoff occurs now, the department will be actually down 2 people, not 1 person. I have made the case in the past, and I'm going to do it again tonight, about what the appropriate staffing levels are. Also, just information for you to consider, because I don't know that everybody is aware of it. If a highway department crew member is laid off, by the confines of the contract, you'd be eliminating the lowest paid crew member with the least financial burden on the town, the lowest salary, and somebody who's already paying toward their benefits, their health benefits. And I'm not convinced, I'm really not convinced, that there's a significant financial gain for the town in relation to the impact of the reduced services on our taxpayers. Again, I've several times in the past made the case that our current crew size is appropriate for our town in terms of mileage, in terms of population, and in terms of the type of roads and maintenance that we require, the standard of service that is expected here and deserved here in Rhinebeck. And we do need a certain amount of crew in order to get the work done. For example, in road repairs and maintenance, a drainage project would often require 2 flaggers, an HEO, an additional equipment operator, a minimum of 2 people on the ground for the drainage, and a project coordinator. So we're already double dipping. That's 7 people. We're already double dipping. That project happens the same time that we need to be out repairing potholes, that we need to be out cutting down limbs that are dangerous to motorists, out there taking care of the flail mowing that has to happen. So again, the size of crew is very important when we do something like shimming and surfacing. Again, you need a minimum of 2 flaggers, 4 rakers, somebody on the roller, 2 truck drivers with the materials, somebody operating the wheelbarrow, a tamper, and again, somebody coordinating all of these efforts. So that's 10 people right there. Again, we already do double duty, and we already cut corners where we can on projects in order to get as much done as we can with the staff that we have. Sweeping is a 3 to 4 person crew. It takes about 12 weeks to do our entire sweeping operation in the spring, and we do sweeping at other times in preparation of road work that we're going to do, and at times when after there have been storms. Again, that's 3 to 4 people. That leaves only 4 others for all the other work that would have to happen. There have been traffic increases in Rhinebeck. That means more flagging. That's 2 out of our crew members that always have to be flagging, because it's really become, it's amazing. I can't believe it. I was on a road today that one would normally think has minimal amounts of traffic, and I turned to Bob and I was like, I can't believe the traffic on this road. And he said, yeah, you're starting to sound like an old timer. So, mowing, 2 people are out on that in terms of the flail mowing, and then we've got the mowing that we do of the cemetery, of the side roads, of areas that we take with the small mower. I mean, there are things that we do. I need the people to disperse them to complete the duties. The mechanic is no longer part of really just the general crew in terms of road work. It's rare that he's out on the road with us, because as we have not replaced aging equipment, there's been more and more need for that upkeep, and he's been in the shop. And we're lucky enough to have Bob Roush, who, once we hired him, was able to bring more work in-house as well, resulting in savings for the town, as well as the other projects that I outlined. When we do our sweeping, that's savings for the town, because we're doing it in-house as opposed to outsourcing it. Winter plowing, for example, we have 8 routes, plus we have the intersection cleanup and inspection route. There are 6 large truck with wings. The routes are about 20 lane miles, plus the travel mileage to and from the shop for reloading. That's 1 or 2 times per, really 2 or 3 times per. It's about 3 and 3.5 hours per cycle. Eliminating a route would add about 4 miles to each route. That's an extra hour plus travel time for each route. A typical storm of 6 to 8 inches takes 3 rounds to treat. That's adding 3 to 4 hours times 6 routes. That's another 18 to 24 hours. Most of that will be accumulated in overtime.